Everybody, welcome to Pause for the Cause. Today we are going to discuss, should we use force to implement change? So I was recently having a discussion on Reddit about the 50-50 employee profit sharing business model that I had proposed, and it seems to me that there's a large percentage of individuals who feel like we need to force a specific business model on all companies, specifically from the left hand side, among the socialist and the Marxist. So I would like to examine a few things and kind of point out what some of the ramifications from doing that could be. So I'd like to ask you a few questions. Sorry about that. Now, what happens when you force a specific behavior on people? I think we can all agree they either comply with the behavior or they do not comply. That's, fairly straightforward, right? Now, what are some of the things that happen when people do not comply? Well, historically, we have seen people respond with things like peaceful protest, violent riots. We've also seen things up to and including war. So these are things that we want to avoid. We don't want to go that route. We don't want to have a war. That's not good for society. It's not a net add. We want positive things for society. Now, why do people respond this way? It's fairly simple, right? They have a fundamental disagreement with whatever is being forced upon society. So that's why we move into, why do they have this fundamental disagreement? Is it because they have a vested interest in the status quo? Or is it because they truly see issues with whatever is being forced? So isn't it worth our time to investigate why they see these issues? And could these issues actually be a problem? Or should we just completely dismiss opposition and force through policy anyway? Now, I lean towards the libertarian mindset when possible. I try to allow people to make their own choices. I believe in the freedom of choice, and I believe that it's core to a healthy society that promotes growth and promotes unity. So I lean against the authoritarian model when we can lean towards the libertarian model instead. Now, ask yourself, why do I want to force a specific behavior on someone? Is it because that you believe that you know better than everyone else on the planet? I mean, personally, I feel like I'm fairly intelligent, but I would never say that I know more than every single other person on this planet. I think that's arrogance. I think that's our ego getting in the way of things. And I think that's why we end up having a lot of problems in society. I think we need more discussions on stuff. So then we move into the other side. Perhaps the reason we want to force the change is because we believe that it's in the interest of the greater good. I mean, who's going to oppose the interest of the greater good, right? Doesn't it take a tyrant to oppose the greater good? Well, we have to be certain on, if our change that we want to implement is actually for the greater good. So it's easy to agree that something like murder is bad for society. We don't want people to just go around and be able to kill others with no consequences. That would not be a net add for society. So it's easy for us to get behind saying, okay, murder, making murders authoritarian, but it's a good authoritarian policy. So we want to examine the long-term effects that could be possible with it. So with economic policy, it's a little harder. So we don't have the immediate, this is going to have this change and we know for certain that it's not going to change anything else. There are cascading effects, and there's unintended consequences that we have to try to map out. This is why forcing a business model on everyone would be bad, because there would be a lot of unintended consequences that you wouldn't be able to predict, because I mean, even the best statistician in the world is not going to get it right 100% of the time, and they'll tell you that. So how do we determine what is for the greater good? So I personally believe that freedom of choice is very important. I think that this is the core to a healthy society. Now, the person that's making the determination on if it's for the greater good, do they have a vested interest in determining, that it's for the greater good? Do they have some kind of a vested interest, whether it be profit or motivation of some other sort? What is their driving force for determining if it's for the greater good? So this is easy to see with government policies that funnel money, our money, the tax money, into specific companies. Great example of this is the vaccination policy for COVID. The policies where the government wanted to force people to take the vaccine funnels money into specific companies. These companies are the ones that benefit from the policy. So it's easy to kind of see paper trails when it comes to government. Now, I personally was vaccinated last year. I think it's a freedom of choice. I believe that we should be able to choose to be vaccinated. However, the company that I worked for last year and this year up until April disagrees with the fundamental freedom of choice mentality. I was actually fired in April because I chose not to upload my personal medical information to a third-party company. And because it was against their policy that I upload my own personal medical information to a different company, I was fired because of that. This is authoritarian. I mean, it's clearly authoritarian. I tried to reason with him. I even sent an email to the CEO, and he did respond, but they didn't change their policy. I even asked him, would you have mandated that Rosa Parks go to the back of the bus? Because at the time, it was considered for the greater good to have segregation. They chose not to answer that question. I understand why they chose not to answer it from a legal standpoint. However, morally, I would still love to hear their answer. So if you're watching, let me know. Now, what happens when people are limited to one option? So we're going to get back on track here. Is there any choice involved? The freedom of choice is fundamental to society, as I alluded to earlier. Now, is anyone able to improve upon the process if you're stuck using one specific process? And by law, you're required to use this one specific process. I mean, the answer is no. I mean, this is a fatal flaw to anybody that would force the same business model on all companies. When you force one specific model, you cannot test out new ideas because the law prevents it from happening. So there's no way for someone to come along and say, hey, look, I found this better model. They could claim that it's a better model, but there's no way for them to actually implement the better model and to show that it works. And so we would be actually stifling growth and innovation in the name of promoting growth and innovation. So there's circular logic there. It doesn't make any sense to try to force a policy that's going to prevent growth and progress. So that's when we come down to just psychological, behavioral aspects and just the way that we process information. There's two types of mentality that can be found within all of us. So usually we have one that we favor over the other one. When we are faced with adversity, we respond typically with either The attitude of, I can't do that because of this. Or we respond with the attitude of, okay, well, how can I do this because of that? It's a completely different mindset. It may not seem like it's much, but it actually is a whole lot, because the forced behavior puts somebody into that mentality of, I can't do this. But when people have options, the freedom of choice, it allows them to think, how can I do this? So this is why I proposed the 50-50 employee profit split, plan. It's an option that provides a more balanced business model that I believe could not only survive in our current capitalist system, but also thrive because of the people that it would attract. It's going to attract more of those how can I mentalities than the other. So, I think it's a good thing for society as far as the plan goes. You check it out, you tell me. Now, how do you feel about this topic? Do you agree with my assessment, or do you disagree? I personally welcome any kind of discourse. I like other people's opinions because it helps me formulate a better opinion on my part. So leave me a comment. Hit the like button if you like this video. Subscribe. As usual, I'd like to thank you for your time. I understand it's a finite resource, and I truly do understand the value of time. So I appreciate that you've given me the chance to explain this, talk about this, watch this today. Like I said, share it if you like it. Remember to use the hashtags Pause for the Cause and the Fix for Capitalism. Once again, thanks guys. Y'all have a great day.